If the Commodore 64 is the light of your life, then stay tuned, because today's the day we transmit the light software for that machine.
We will also be tickling the eyebrows of the Commodore 64. You don't think it's possible? You'd better watch to find out how.
Indeed, yes, but if you own a BBC machine, we're probably not your favourite people, especially if you tried to download last week's light software. We discovered what went wrong. There was a patching error between the software DOT and our master videotape recorder. Well, we did tell you it was a bit of an experiment. So now that we've sorted that out, we're going to be repeating the light software for the BBC machine in 2 weeks' time, on March the 25th. But first, this week's opening titles.
This week's opening titles were programmed by Andrew Wiseman. Andrew, welcome to the programme. Now, can you give us some idea about how you went about doing the graphics on this?
Yes, well, the first thing which I embarked upon was the graphics, which I stored in memory separately, which enabled the programme to run more quickly if it was just stored there as a screen. And then I was set to work on the actual basic programme, which is quite a simple one. And then, in the end, it took me about a week to write, and on the last couple of days, it was just putting the finishing touches.
Now, one thing that's been a bit disappointing from my point of view is that we haven't had any opening titles from any girls. Now, I understand that in your computer lab, you've taken some measures to hopefully rectify.
Yes, well, when the computer lab opens, eventually, it's his hope that there will be set times of the day when girls only will be allowed in the computer room, and this is for the simple reason that it seems that when girls are in the company of boys, they are afraid to touch the keyboard in case they are laughed at or humiliated, which tends to put a lot of girls off computers.
Right, well, hopefully that'll do something for them. Thank you very much, Andrew. Tony?
Well, come on, you girls, and indeed anyone else. There's still time to get your opening titles on this series of 4 Computer Buffs. If you have a good idea or some software, this is the address to send it to. It is 4 Computer Buffs, Thames Television, 149 Tottenham Court Road, London, W1P 9LL. Now it's time to get those Commodore 64s standing by for the light pen software. Place your dark-coloured sucker in position over the annoying black blob when it appears, and press the space bar when the instruction tells you so to do. In the meantime, here's Dr. Mike Thorne investigating the computer language logo.
This lovely house, and there are going to be some flowers in a minute, is written in the programming language logo. And Rosalind Graf, you wrote this program, didn't you?
Yeah.
It's absolutely smashing. How long have you been learning logo?
About a month, I've been doing.
About a month. It's pretty good going, actually. Now, in logo, you have to get the turtle wandering about the screen, don't you?
Yeah.
And is that what you did?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's have a look inside then to see how you've done it.
Right.
It's long.
Yeah.
There's more to come. Here we go. It is long. There's the bit where you typed out your name at the bottom of the picture. Mm-hmm. What do these instructions mean? There's that FD10 there. What does that do?
That, it tells the turtle to go forward a certain amount, so it leaves a trail.
Mm-hmm. And this, what have we got here? LT90, what does that do?
That turns it left 90 degrees.
Mm-hmm. OK, and now what about flower? You've got flower twice there. Does the logo come able to draw a flower?
No, you have to give it commands to do the flower separately.
And you've done that, have you?
Yeah.
Well, could we have a look at what flower actually does first, then? Yes, they're nice. OK, now let's look inside the flower program.
Right.
Oh, that's a bit shorter, but nonetheless complicated. What have we got here? What does this repeat at the end do, then?
That, you give instructions in this brackets, and it does those 4 times.
It repeats everything in the brackets 4 times. Well, it's smashing work. Thanks very much for coming to show it to us. One of the people who's done as much as anybody to encourage both adults and children to use Logo is Richard Noss, and he's with us now. Richard, hi.
Hello, Mike.
Until recently, Richard was the director of the Chiltern Logo project. Richard, is progress like that, typical, all that in a month?
It is typical, and I think one of the reasons is because of the way that Logo uses sub-programs like flower, and Ros was able to make her garden of flowers just by typing the word flower. And that's also one of the reasons why Logo is a very powerful language for adults as well.
Because you can make little pieces and then glue them together.
That's right. None of us think in a kind of linear way where you know the answer to the problem before you start. We all just like to start somewhere and solve a little problem first, and that's what Logo lets you do.
You've got sort of half a program on the screen there. What does this do?
Well, this is a simple example of something called recursion. And recursion lets you use a procedure itself as a sub-procedure. Let me run it first and show you what it does. It draws a spiral, and as you can see, each arm of the spiral gets a little bit longer. I'll stop the program and show you how it was written. And you can see there that I teach the computer how to spiral, just like teaching somebody how to do something. And I tell the program to go forward a certain length. And I don't have to tell it that until I run the program.
Right.
Now, here at the bottom of the program, you can see spiral again.
And that's a recursive bit.
That's recursion, and it turns out that recursion is a very powerful way to build quite complex programs.
It reminds me of the Tale of the Three Wishes. Do you know that?
No, I don't.
Well, suppose I was the wizard from the planet Nibu-Crodnod, and I came down and offered you 3 wishes. What would be the best choice of third wish?
That I could pronounce it.
I suppose so. No, I think the best choice would be to ask for 3 more wishes.
Oh, right. Well, that's exactly how recursion works. At the end of spiral, the choice is to do spiral again. Only this time, notice that the wishes are slightly different. The input, or the amount to go forward here, is not length, but length plus 5. And it's that recursive line that makes the program grow.
Yes, I see. I'm very tempted to ask you to change that number. Can we do that?
Yes. It'll give me a chance to show off the Logo screen editor, which works just like a word processor editor.
So you can edit something wherever it is on the screen?
That's right, and without having to retype whole lines or whatever.
91, I wonder if that will make any significant difference.
I don't know. Shall we have a look and see? OK, let's try. I'll type spiral. Oh, I've left out the input.
Yeah, right.
I'll give it a first input and see what happens.
No, it's coming out all skewed, so it has made a significant difference.
It's surprising, isn't it?
Yes. Oh, now what's happening?
Well, the screen is wrapping round, and I forgot to turn that feature off. It's quite easy to turn it off in Logo. You just type a different word.
It's rather pretty all the same, though.
Yes, well, it often turns out, actually, that doing something by accident ends you up somewhere nicer than where you thought you were going.
Right. OK, now I suppose all the rage at the moment in languages like BASIC is the ability to do good graphics with sprites and lots of music. Can you do that in Logo?
Yes, you can. Actually, I have a program here on the Atari written by 2 friends of mine called Noel and David, and they're aged 11.
Looks very nice.
Let me run their program, and then you'll see how it works. Well, here's the sprite, and you can see the birds flapping their way across the screen.
They're gorgeous, actually. Yeah.
That's right, and sprites can be given a shape, like this one, and they can be given a speed. That's how they differ from turtles, which are really quite stationary.
And you program them just like the turtle, do you?
That's what... Yes. And here's the reason why it's called Superman. You can hear that the music's not quite up to the standard of the programming, can't you?
Ever so slightly. How have they done the music, actually?
Well, music is, in this program, just simply generated by the program music.
What else, I suppose, yes.
And there it is, and you can see the same idea of sub-procedures, tune, tune 1, tune 2, tune 3, and those are the separate bits of the Superman theme.
Can we look at one of them?
OK. There's tune, and you can see it's pretty incomprehensible list of numbers.
Yes, well, all these, is it a million, 1 and all those zeros?
Well, those numbers are the frequencies, the pitch of the notes, and the second list of numbers down here is how long they last for. The million is a way of getting a short rest into the notes, and human beings can't hear it, but the local dogs can.
OK, well, that's the music. Well, how do you do the sprites, then?
Well, each sprite has its own specific number, and the birds happen to be on sprite 1. So if I talk to sprite 1 by saying tell 1, and then home it into the middle of the screen, and ST is short for show turtle, there's the sprite. And one can do anything with the sprite that one wants to do. For example, move it forward with a speed of... what should we give it?
Well, say 26.
OK. Set speed 26, and that sets it going. And now I can turn it right, let's say 120. That moves it down again. And I can increase the speed and send them shooting around the screen and so on.
Smashing. How do you actually define the shapes that the sprites carry around?
Well, the easiest way is to use the sprite editor. And here's how it works.
That looks like a pixel editor.
That's right. This is a piece of Superman's body, actually. And one of the clever things that Noel David did is to piece the actual figure together from 3 separate sprites. But all you do is you move your cursor around and simply wipe bits out or put them in and so on.
I see. And what about the internal form, then, of sprites? Does that look like this, or...?
Well, let me show you the internal form, for example, of birds. And that's how Logo stores it.
Very meaningful, that.
Yes, not very, is it? It's quite typical of Logo to store things in a way like this, but you don't, of course, have to get involved with it, because although a sophisticated programmer might want to get in and fiddle around with that list, people like you and me can just play with the sprite editor, and that's a lot easier.
OK. Now, I think you've convinced me that you can do good sprite graphics and have nice music in Logo. There's numbers on the screen there. In BASIC, you know, BASIC eats numbers alive, really. Can you do numbers with Logo?
Yes, you usually get the option, like in this case, of avoiding the numbers if you want to. But there are cases, of course, where numbers are what you're interested in, and I've got an example like that on the Apple over here.
Is this the old version of Apple Logo?
No, this is the new version for the 128K 2E and also for the 2C.
This looks like a sine curve.
Yeah, that's right. Logo has a full complement of mathematical functions like any other programming language.
And can you display that in table form too?
Sure, yes.
Oh, yes, that looks like...
It doesn't really add much to the understanding, does it?
That looks really like maths, that does.
That's right.
Now, I think you've convinced me that, you know, Logo's got most of the things that are in a good version of BASIC. But what about versions of Logo itself? There's a range you've demonstrated. Spectrum, Commodore 64, Atari, and the Apple itself all have Logo. What about the BBC machine?
Well, I think you said it yourself. Logo can do everything that, for example, BASIC can do. But the idea is not just to be able to do it, but for people to be able to do it easily. And we've been waiting a long time for a version of Logo for the BBC machine.
Is that because people have found it hard to squeeze it in?
I think so, yes. In the interim period, people have written lots of programs called Logo this and Logo that, which purport to be Logo, but in actual fact are really just graphics programs.
How many versions are there for the BBC machine?
Well, there are now 4 versions of Logo for the BBC machine, yes.
How do you choose between them?
With great difficulty. It's actually quite difficult. But I think there are 1 or 2 things that people maybe should look out for. I think the first thing is that the version should have a good word processor style screen editor. Making mistakes is a very important part of Logo programming, and it's very important to be able to change those mistakes and rectify them as easily as possible. I think the second thing is that the language itself should offer you power. It should be able to do everything that you might want to do.
So you want it to be fast?
Oh, well, fast, but also a full range of things that it can do, and there's no doubt that some versions are more powerful than others. And as you say, speed is important. The speed varies tremendously between versions. Right.
Now I'm going to put you on the spot. Which version of the 4 versions of the BBC would you pick?
Well, I think it's part of Logo's philosophy that the person doing the programming makes his or her own decisions, and I think I'll have to leave that decision to you, Mike.
You've avoided the issue very well,
That's true.
Well, here are the 4 Logo software packages for the BBC machine, and the moral with these, as with all software, is try it before you buy it. And if the shop won't let you, then find a shop that will before you part with your hard-earned cash. Try it out. Now playing some more software, here's Jane.
Another Logo that's becoming quite popular is MSX. And now that the firms have recovered from their appalling Christmas sales figures, they're ready now to dominate the whole of the British market. One major selling factor about the MSX format is that while the computers keep their compatibility, it enables each company to go for different specialisations. And to show you just how far down that route we've been able to go, we've been asking Rick here to look at the Yamaha CX-5. Now, Rick, welcome. First of all, how much can you do with this particular system?
Well, you can do an awful lot, actually. I mean, I've just put a basic in at the moment with a harpsichord at the top and a trumpet down the bottom. And they're very genuinely interesting sounds. They're good sounds. The editing facility is fine. For example, if I go into edit, to edit the harpsichord, which is... I just alter the attack, for example, on the first oscillator to, say, to 10. It becomes quite a fine sitar sound.
That does sound quite different.
Yeah, the sounds are excellent, actually, but you have to play with them. I mean, they're not actually as good as they can be. I mean, once you work on them and you play with them, but that's the whole joy, I think, if everything was fine in the first place.
How much of what we see here is actually the CX-5?
Well, basically you get this, the small keyboard, which is for writing more than anything else. If you want to play, you really do need the bigger keyboard, which is not that much extra. I mean, the whole package is about £600. And, of course, with the MIDI, you can add in your drum machine, trigger off your drum machine and work with the DX7. You can do an awful lot. The composing thing is quite fantastic. I can only show you very basically because you really need an awful long time. But it'll basically do anything for you. You can write in your key. Actually, there are function buttons for that, but I can never remember which ones they are. So you write in your key.
So having specified the key, it puts all the sharps and flats in where it should be.
It does your time for you. And it'll... sorry. Even it'll do your tempo for you. So say, for example, we wanted to have 1, 4, 6. And then along here you can just choose your... so I want it to be semi-quavers. Well, I'll say quavers, which is better. Put those in. If you want to be able to hear it, so you put the speaker on and do it on the keyboard, and whatever you...
And that just then goes away and writes the music for you.
That's
Can you
right.
also print that out?
It'll print it out, and it'll also play it back for you. And you can do it...
seems to be a very professional system.
It is. You can do up to 8 parts. You can change the sound. You can do whatever sounds you like when you're playing back. It'll print it out for you. It's excellent. I thought it was a toy when I first got hold of it. I thought it was an expensive toy, but it actually is a very, very cheap synthesizer computer.
Would you use one?
Very much so. I think it's a must for composers and arrangers.
That's an endorsement in itself. Rick, thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Now, what happens if you don't want to spend quite that much money on a professional type system, or you already have a computer of your own? What's available? Well, take a look at this. It doesn't look like much, but in fact it's part of a very neat software package for the Commodore 64, which aims to take the heartache out of music programming. And it actually sounds rather good. Certainly an amazing sound. Tell me, how did you get on with actually using computers rather than instruments?
We find it quite difficult because the size of the keyboard is so small. We found it's very good for beginners, but not for us. And the change of octave takes too long, so you couldn't use it in the middle of a piece.
You can't change octave very easily. And I think you've had some previous experience with computers, haven't you? How did you find combining computers and music?
I didn't think it worked out very well, but any music program for a home computer is going to be limited, because at most, really, there's 3 voices simultaneously.
So in some ways you'd prefer to be using what we were hearing before?
Yes.
You can have some fun with that. How did you get on? Nice to see some girls here as well.
My family enjoyed playing with it, although they got bored with it after 2 days. But my brother, he taught himself how to read music from playing about with it.
So for first-time users of music as well, it could then encourage your brother to learn an instrument. That's a good point. What about you?
Well, I found that the software was too limited to record any of the gadgets onto the sequencer, but you can get some good sounds from the gadgets.
Now, Mark, I think you composed the music. Did you have to go about composing it in a slightly different way because it was on a computer?
No, I just treated each computer as a separate instrument, wrote it in a normal way.
And then put them all together. And David, you helped teach music at the school. Was it that different, sort of using computers rather than violins and cellos?
Not really, no. I've never used computers before, and I found it quite easy to operate, and we've had a lot of fun using them.
Well, I'm glad you've enjoyed it. Now, of course, the software we've been using is Music Maker, and it says it's for beginners and musicians. Now, David, you've identified yourself as a beginner, but as a musician, how did you find the software?
Well, I think that we all found as musicians there are 1 or 2 limitations, really, with the software as it stands at the moment. I can show you one of those, which Russell's already referred to, the problem of changing octaves. At the minute, I'm on a fairly high octave. If I want to go around and change to something lower, it really takes quite a long time. There are 6 different octaves that you can use on the machine. I'm moving round, and I still haven't got to the octave that I want, you see. At last, I've arrived there now.
So it's not something you can do in the middle of a piece, for example?
Exactly, no, it'd be quite impossible. You're restricted just to these notes.
Any other limitations?
Yeah, well, we found 1 or 2 from the composing point of view, which I think Mark can show you with the sequencer.
Yeah, when using the sequencer, you just program the notes you want, and once you've done that, you can edit them, but after that, you can't change them at all, so you're stuck with them. So editing's quite easy. You just go back, find the note that's wrong, then type in the new notes, and after that, you tap the timing on any key.
So if you want to put another tune above that tune, you have to use a different computer?
Yeah.
What about the degree of control you have on the notes and the sounds themselves?
Well, there are 8 preset sounds, some of which are really quite good, some of which are not so good. For instance, this one is supposed to sound like a steel drum. Well, it's quite fun, but it doesn't really sound much like a steel drum. But it is possible to modify the sound in really quite a precise way, and I can show you that now on here. You can change the different types, the different parts of the sound. The attack at the moment is very low. I can increase that a little bit. The decay is quite high. I can move that round to something rather lower as well. Sustain, if I was going to play a tune, I might want something rather longer there, so I can increase the degree of sustain. Release, perhaps a little less than I had last time. And I can actually produce a very different sound doing this. I'll show you now. The sound that now comes out of the machine is really very different.
So you have a great degree of control and sophistication over some areas of the programme and very little over other areas.
Yes, as it stands, that's right.
Well, thank you all very much indeed. Now, if you want to add a new dimension to your Commodore 64, then the software costs about £30.
Right, news time. Here's Guy.
This week, John Vorak, our man in Silicon Valley, thinks he's put his finger on why everybody in the micro-business gets shy when you ask how things are doing. Take the example of Apple, which has had to close down production of odd bits and pieces, things like cases for the Macintosh, because there are more bits and pieces than customers. The city, I know, will instantly rush for its phone, saying that the micro-market is collapsing. But the real reason things are slow is, and I quote John Vorak, it's the market doldrums you always get when everybody is expecting an IBM announcement. That announcement would be the PC2, which we're still waiting for. We do have some tangible news from the expensive end of the micro-business, that's the Unix area. It concerns Cypher, a company which has now had to retrench rather firmly. It did it last July. It's just announced another retrenchment. Its finance backers have now accepted a new business plan which calls for heavy redundancies, 89 people, leaving only 135 behind. I think it was Unix specialist Sphinx which recently described the Unix way of life as rather like sitting on a cold volcano. And I couldn't put it better. Jane.
But even cold volcanoes erupt sometime. Now then, have our Homelink bullet users been behaving themselves this week?
I'm glad to say they have heeded our warning from last week, and there have been no obscenities and much less trivial messages and so on. There is a problem at the moment, though. New users, unfortunately, cannot register. Nottingham Building Society are working this out as fast as possible, and just keep trying and you should be able to get on eventually.
Let's hope so. Now, tomorrow's free software is from Amsoft for the Amstrad machine. Of course, it's on Channel 4 at 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock, so we suggest you set your video recorders. In the meantime, you can always send us some electronic mail. Remember the Presto page, 7776. Or, of course, keep up with the news through Channel 4's Oracle. That's Fortel, page 458. And do let us know how you're getting on downloading that software. But cheer up. Remember this, you are more a part of this programme as an audience than any other audience of the history of television. At least that's what I've worked out. Till next week, from all of us here on 4 Computer Buffs.